That would be awesome. All right, we're live on YouTube right now. It looks like, at least.
Awesome.
I'm just waiting for us to pop up on. Okay, live on YouTube. Just waiting for us to pop up on LinkedIn, and then we'll have some idle chit chat here as people join in. We always want to let's practice Davio in a few minutes to join in, right?
Yep. LinkedIn just went live for me.
Yep. Got it too. Let me start that up and hit mute on that.
Just give it a little thumbs up.
We all Jackie has a paddle board at the back.
Thanks.
Cool. You do a lot of stand-up paddleboarding?
What was that?
No, I was asking you if you do a lot of stand-up paddleboarding.
I do when we're outside. Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, Shannon. Hello. I see Shannon.
Is that the keychain collection?
That is the keychain collection.
Oh my.
Nice.
It's not on the wall because the walls in my building are concrete. And so you need like a hammer drill to drill in. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Get like 50 of those 3M Velcro adhesive strips to the back of that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are really hard to pull off later. If you ever have to move out, that'll be fun to pull out.
Yeah.
Jackie, what kind of bike is that? Is that a mountain bike or is that a hybrid?
Mountain bike? Yeah. Nice. But I mostly use it to commute.
What kind?
It's just like an REI brand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cool. Also, my cat just had lunch, and so she's a little meowy right now. So I'm sorry if you can hear her in the background.
I haven't heard her so far, so
Oh, good.
I can hear her.
It'll be fun though if she comes into the cam.
Yeah, we'll see. She might go nuts. I don't know. Sometimes she gets zoomies after she eats.
All right, no one's mad about a cat popping in.
No, that'd be fun.
All right, 2 minutes in. I think we're good, given enough people some time. So, for those that have already joined, thank you very much for tuning in today to another one of our live broadcasts. This is going to be another one called Remote Spotlight. I think we just did one on design, and then now we're going to be focused on delivery leads. And I should kind of give like an idea of what delivery lead means at Detroit Labs. So I don't want to necessarily call it project management, but there is an aspect of that. So I would say it's project management meets Scrum Master with some account management in there too, because y'all are constantly talking to the client. It is a difficult position, and like I said, that's a position where a lot of different responsibilities kind of fold up and roll up to one role. And I think we're in a somewhat unique situation now where not only our entire team's remote, but as a delivery lead, you are also remote. And Dee, you started going remote several months ago. So I think as far as this panel goes, you are the veteran. Jackie, you've transitioned along with the rest of us going remote. And we had a conversation early on trying to just talk through, hey, what do we want to talk about during this stream? And there have been a couple key themes that came up during that. And I think one of the first ones was just communication, because that all changes once you go remote. So Jackie, you want to jump in first and just talk about what you've experienced so far, what has helped, and maybe some intentional things that you've had to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think regarding communication, the first thing that you need to do is have a conversation with your team about communication and what is going to be expected of everyone for communication. And you work as a team to establish those expectations. So as a delivery leader, servant leader, you're not telling people how to communicate, but you're all agreeing on how to communicate. And if you are on a team that creates team agreements or has a set of team agreements, perhaps you have some temporary things related to communication that you add to those team agreements while your team is remote. For my team, what we did was now we decided that we're consistently going to post in our Slack channel, in our team Slack channel, when we're online on the morning, when we're taking lunch, and I think a really big important one too is when we're signing off, which are things that remote team members who were remote for a day would already do, but now everyone is more consistently doing that because we as a team agreed to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that in saying that there's definitely more of a need for transparency and over-communicating when we're all remote, and making sure that the work that we're all doing is visible to each other, or working out loud, as you would call it. Making sure people feel comfortable reaching out to the team when they have challenges, or agreeing, like Jackie said, on the best ways of communicating within the team. So does Slack make sense for a particular situation, or is it a situation where it helps to jump on a quick call? So deciding those types of things, I think, have been helpful as I transitioned to being remote.
Yeah, I also think regarding jumping on a call, I think sometimes when folks are remote, there can be some hesitancy to bring contact back in and to have a call. And what I've been trying to do, and I think my team has also been doing this, is as soon as we have like that little inkling of like, maybe this should be a conversation, maybe this shouldn't be us typing back and forth to one another, we just immediately grapple on to that instinct and say, hey, can we have just a team Slack call right now? So we've been having a lot more team Slack calls than we would when we were mostly in an office. And so those have kind of taken the place of any like impromptu little huddles between 2 or 3 people. And the key there is listening to your instinct that that needs to happen, because it can be really tempting to just continue typing back and forth because there isn't a person like right next to you that you can turn to. And so use like a Google Hangout, or just have impromptu meetings like you would if you were just at your desks.
Yeah.
So you brought something up during the conversation, and I'm not sure if everyone knows what this means, or maybe just not sure if everyone knows what this means at labs, but I asked because it was relatively new to me when it started to come up. But this notion of team agreements, like, what are they?
Yeah. So team agreements are a set of, I don't know if like guidelines or rules is the right way to say it, but at labs, and this is common in agile teams as well, rather than having rules of how to work dictated to a team by, say, the team lead, the team comes together and agrees upon what their expectations are going to be from one another. So that can include like core working hours, particularly if you're in an office or a company that has a flexible working day. It can include things like headphone policy, which isn't as relevant right now since we're not in the office. But like if you were in the office, if someone has their headphones on, rather than walking up to them, ping them in Slack, you know. So it's kind of it helps us hold each other accountable for having good team practices and healthy communication and a good team atmosphere. But the important thing is that the team comes together and creates these agreements together on how to work, rather than them being like handed to them.
So that's great. And it kind of transitions to another thing, Dee, that you had actually said earlier. You know, during your transition, you had learned that trust was a big piece of that. Is that something that you had to work hard on that piece? Does that come naturally? Where does that fall into this whole equation?
Yeah, so I think trust is an important factor, of course, on any team working together, but I think it kind of gets magnified in importance when you're working remotely because you have fewer data points. So you're not sitting in the same space together, seeing what people are doing. Or if you're in a meeting and somebody is really quiet in person, but they're still contributing and able to have a good outcome, then you have a different perception of that when you're co-located versus if you're remote and you just don't hear somebody's voice at all and they're not speaking up, for example, in a meeting. So I think it becomes more important as you work remotely. That's kind of what I found. And I think it's good to remember to focus on outcomes versus activity in general.
All right. So one of the things I'm going to at least post out to anybody that's viewing right now, if you do have a question for Dee or for Jackie, not necessarily Dave and I, we can't provide you with any answers, but Dee and Jackie certainly can ask either on YouTube or LinkedIn. We are paying attention to those, and I'm sure everyone would love to answer live questions without any prep because that's fun.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I think kind of as we walk through this, right, we talk about communication, team agreements, trust. Kind of boiled into that is some of the one-on-one engagements that or interactions, I should say, that happen between delivery lead and team member. Normally those happen in person and probably more frequently. But do you find yourself? Do you have to intentionally make time to check in with individuals?
Yeah. So when I first transitioned to being remote, I had a conversation with the team and said I would be trying to check in with every person on the team at least once a week for 15, 20 minutes, just a casual conversation. And that was really helpful for me in staying connected with everyone else on the team. And I think it's also important to deliberately facilitate those types of conversations between team members. So things that naturally and organically happen when you're co-located, but now you have to think about it a little more deliberately or intentionally. So maybe it's just 5 minutes at the start of a meeting or at the end of a meeting where you're chatting with people and trying to figure out what's going on in their lives, just taking some time to maintain and build those relationships.
Yeah, I agree. I've definitely noticed that one thing our team has been doing is at the end of a meeting that we have, particularly if it's like with the client and then the client hops off of the meeting invite, the team kind of will just hang out for an extra minute or two and just be chatting a bit more than even we probably would when we're in the office, and that's been really nice because it's been some good like impromptu team bonding time, which is cool. And another thing like regarding check-ins, as a team leader, I think it's really important to keep a good gauge on team health and how individuals are feeling as well. And particularly at a time right now, there are some individuals who are in even more stressful situations than you might be yourself. So, for example, if there's super high priority work going on that someone is looking into, intentionally reach out to them at a time like this because they can feel if they're really working very hard and perhaps they're putting in long hours, they might feel more on an island right now and less supported because they're not right next to their peers. So being intentional about reaching out to those types of folks. Or I just think of parents right now and parents who need to be working from home with little kids running around now that school is out and some childcare it doesn't exist anymore or can't be had. Like I've been trying to consciously reach out to those folks on my team as well, just to check in and say like, how are you doing? And let them know that if they need to take some space and some time for themselves, that they absolutely can.
That's great. And I want to kind of continue on that theme of individuals, and I want to talk about the importance of recognition. And actually, Jackie, I'm going to have you start on it because there's actually a question for D, and I'm going to let you read it in the private chat room before I post up on the screen. So if you want to click over there, you can read it while Jackie talks about the importance of recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, recognition and both team recognition, but especially individual recognition is important in any sort of working environment, even if you were in the office. But it's even more important now that everyone is remote, because again, we're trying to make sure that folks are feeling supported, that they still feel a part of the team, that they know that they're doing a good job. And so what I've been trying to do is, I do this in like my day-to-day, even in the office, but when I have that little inkling that, oh, that person did something really great and I really appreciate what they do, I'm very intentional about listening to that instinct and reaching out to them, whether that's individually. So doing a little one-to-one, like, hey, you said that thing and to the client and you said it really well and you did a really great job and I appreciate you. I see you, I recognize you. Or even doing that in a public Slack channel, giving someone a shout out. Something I've noticed on our team is that we're usually pretty, but team is just handing out shout outs like left and right now. And I think it's a really good morale booster during tough times.
Awesome. Dee, are you ready for your question before I pop it up on the screen?
Sure.
So, Lauren Malatesta asks, can Dee elaborate on what she means by focusing on outcomes versus activities? What are some examples?
So I think this came up when we were talking about the trust factor. I think a lot of folks tend to be hesitant about remote work because you don't see people next to you working, or it's hard to be in the same, you're not in the same space, so it's not as visible. And so what I meant by that was focusing on what results are being accomplished by that individual instead of focusing on what are they doing at each moment of the day. So as if the work is getting done and they're meeting expectations, then that's what the important part is. And I think there needs to be an element of trust involved when you switch to being remote for that to work properly.
You know, I really like that as advice, not just for remote, but for, you know, right, companies at large, companies in general. I think in a lot of places there's focus on being in your seat for a specific amount of time. But there's not really a measurement of, yeah, even if you're in your seat for a specific amount of time, that doesn't guarantee that you are doing something in that amount of time, even if it looks like you're doing something. And so focusing on those outcomes are key. Dave will kind of laugh at this, and I won't say the developer's name, but we had a developer who had, I'm talking about the best time management of any person I've ever seen, to the point where this person was able to spend a significant amount of time at, going to the gym, going to coffee and things, like working that into their daily schedule. And it's because every single time they were able to deliver. Mm-hmm. And if that person is watching, they know who they are. But it was always fascinating to me, and I very much enjoyed it.
I think that's particularly important as we're all getting used to a new normal with working from home. And it's a weird situation. Sometimes it can be, if you're not used to working from home, it can be really difficult to get into the working mindset. And I think it's important as an individual, but then also as a leader, to recognize that there's still an adjustment period. And honestly, like, some folks might never fully adjust to working from home. And it's important to recognize that and like create a safe space for that. I just had to do that this morning where, it was like 10 o'clock and I still was just like feeling like a slug moving into the day. And I just told the team, I was like, hey, I need to just take a 10-minute yoga break. I for some reason, I'm having a hard time like switching context into the workday. And so I need to give myself some space. And the team was, like applauding me, like, yeah, you take that space and, and you do what you need to do. And as a leader, I think it's important to really encourage the team to do that. That's where some of those individual check-ins, like if we want to go back to that, if you notice that someone is having a hard time or they give signs that, oh, I'm having a hard day, just check in with them and say, hey, if you need to take 15 minutes, if you need to take a half an hour, you feel free to do that.
So now, before we jump into, so again, reminder: if you do have questions, definitely ask and we'll address. But I want to briefly ask about tools before we get into something that I think is very important, and that's team fun. But let's talk about tools, because I think that also transitions into trying to have remote team fun. Maybe just talk about some of the tools that we use from a delivery lead standpoint, not necessarily that they have changed because we're remote, but I think in a lot of ways, I mean, they have set us up to be able to be remote.
Yeah, and I think I was thinking about this when I first transitioned to being remote, and I feel like on our project teams, almost all of the tools that we use set us up really well for remote work. So things like our Google Drive, which is a central repository of all our documents for the project, or Jira, which gives us a way to track all of the work that the team is doing. So at any point, you know what's being worked on and what somebody on the team is working on. So you're not stepping on each other's toes, and that helps build that trust as well. And then also our Hangouts that we use for video chats and video conferences have been really helpful, I think.
Were you going to chime in, Jackie, or we do have a question that I want to hit before we go to Team Fun?
Yeah, I was going to chime in real quickly. I think Slack calls have been, I mentioned this earlier, but Slack calls have really become the new impromptu meeting for us. And we've had like full team Slack calls where we just pivoted to a quick huddle with the team rather than, sometimes if you use a Google Hangout, it might feel like, oh, well, we need to put it on the calendar and then whatever. But the Slack call feature has been really helpful for us.
Yeah, I've noticed I've actually been using that instead of, I used to default to phone calls all the time, but now that we're home and there's so many different ways to communicate with each other, I felt like I was constantly switching between phone, device, and all these other different things. And going over to Slack calls was a big help. Like, it's really nice. So Jordan Jones asked that. What's that? You said it's easy?
I said it's so easy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's half the battle sometimes. So Jordan Jones asked this, which I thought was an interesting thing. We're talking about right now the role and responsibility, but also the need to have delivery leads support their team. But how can team members, and this is obviously beyond just Detroit Labs, how can team members best support their delivery lead?
For me, I think one of the best ways is making sure everyone's communicating really well. So making sure you're making your status visible in Slack if you're doing something else, or if you need a break and you're out for lunch. So just being diligent about updating the team when you're available or not, making sure time off is communicated well in advance. So just things like that.
I think one important thing for me is taking any direct message and putting it into a public channel. Now that everyone is remote, I think there's a greater tendency to have a less visible conversation in a direct message, either with a peer or even like if your client is in Slack too, having a direct message with the client and then forgetting to make that visible again. So that's something that's really important for me, because trying to just keep tabs and a feel on everything, I like visibility and transparency into conversations.
Awesome. You all ready for another question? This one was asked by Toby, and very sorry Toby wasn't on the stream today, but he is watching and has a question for us. When putting together team agreements, is there a template guideline you follow? If someone or team has never made one before, how can they get started?
Whew, that's a deep one. That could be a whole live session on itself. I think one strategy that I've used for creating team agreements, if you haven't gotten started yet, is just agreeing on what your core goals and your core values are. And so as a team, we believe in a quality product. Like, we believe in quality over speed. That's something, or that you might all believe in. And then under that core value, what are things that you as a team are going to agree to do to uphold that value? That's a really simple way of doing it, but team agreements can be really simple. They can be really complicated. There's a lot of resources online on different strategies, but there's no like one right or wrong way to do a team agreement.
All right, you comfortable for one more question? This one comes from Derek Quinn on YouTube. When in the office, I normally rely on tools like whiteboards and talking with my hands to communicate. What illustrative tools have been working best for you to discuss technical issues?
I have used Miro in the past on a different, in my previous job, I would say. So that one I really like. Not sure if there are other ones. I know that there are several other ones out there, but I haven't personally used them.
Yeah, I've used Mural in the past too. I think they have a free 30-day trial or something like that. So if you're really into whiteboarding, you might want to take advantage of that free 30-day trial. If it exists, don't quote me on that. But that's a really great tool for whiteboarding, because not only can you draw on the mural, but you can also create sticky notes and titles in different sections. And it's very similar to collaborating in a Google Doc. So if there are multiple people in the mural, you can see exactly what they're doing at the same time. So it's a really good collaboration tool.
I got another question that I'm going to pop in here in a minute. Are those team agreements changing as a result of the lack of proximity? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, our team agreements did not change much, because we already realized that we had good agreements and practices in place that supported remote work. So ours didn't actually change for my team, but I think the most important thing is that we had a conversation about it. Do they need to change? Is there anything else that we need to take into consideration? And we as a team decided, no, not really, other than just making sure that we're posting when we're online and when we leave, which is something that we kind of already did when we were remote. And we just agreed to follow through.
Yeah, I have the same situation as Jackie. We didn't change ours either when I transitioned to being fully remote, but it was for the similar reasons. We were already doing a lot of those things as a team, communicating, making sure we kept everyone updated on when we were going to be out, or if we were taking a lunch break or things like that. So yeah, we didn't officially change them.
All right. So I'm going to make sure that I prop this out again. Again, if you have any questions, good questions so far, which is great. And Dave even suggested we should release our own template for team agreements. I know Shannon worked on had a template for the marketing team, which was nice to build off of, and a good exercise that she put the team through. So the great thing is team agreements aren't just for software development. I mean, literally they could be for anything, and it's nice. All right, so we've kind of had some questions before we got to this, but now I want to get to this because this is, I think, I don't care who wants to start on this, but maybe explain first what Team Fun has traditionally been, and maybe the cadence, what happens, and then what it has turned into now that everyone's remote. Whoever wants to jump in is fine.
Yeah, so Team Fun is just something we tend to do on projects every month, just to bring the whole team together, team building activities, and there's a wide range of things that teams do. It's really very creative, so a lot of people come up with really creative things to do during Team Fun. Transitioning to being remote, initially I thought it would be a bit of a challenge, but there are so many different opportunities now to have a virtual Team Fun. So it might be something as simple as scheduling a remote happy hour where everybody is just chit-chatting, drinking their favorite beverage. Or there's a lot of games now that are online. I think Jackbox games is something a lot of us at labs have used. So yeah, there's a lot of options out there.
Yeah, our team recently had a remote Team Fun just last week, and it was over lunch, so we all ate lunch at our desks while we were playing a game called Scribble.io, which is kind of like online Pictionary, and it can support, I think, up to 12 people. Our team is somewhat large, and so it was really nice to see an online tool that could support that number of folks, and it was really fun. We hopped on a Google Hangout so that we could all hear each other talking. And then we also had the Scribble.io app up. So we were talking about each other's drawings and making jokes, and it turned out really well, and it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right. So
we do have a blog post out, I think. We recently published a blog post about remote Team Fun. So check out DetroitLabs.com if you want some more ideas.
Ooh, that's a great thing. Elise can comment on YouTube and then LinkedIn as well with the link, since I believe she is the one that put that together, which is fantastic. All right. Anything else to add? I'm gonna put the prompt up there again. If you do have a question, ask away. We are, believe it or not, we are 32 minutes in the stream. I told you it goes by faster than you think it would, and it makes it easy when it's just a conversation here. Anything else? Any other advice that you would have for and you know, I'm gonna add in there. I'm gonna add project managers in there. I'm gonna add scrum masters in there, account executives, because there's a lot of different things that you do that is what they do. Any other advice that you would have for them as they're transitioning to this new world?
I think with this sort of people type role and leadership role, communication is a really big part of our job. And a lot of that communication when we're in the office tends to be face-to-face. And I think a lot of folks in this role might really miss that face-to-face communication. And obviously we can't totally replace that. But if you're the type of person who likes to have a conversation, whether that's a call or a Google Hangout, like a video chat, just give everyone a heads up that you'll likely request more calls with folks just to check in or understand a concept. And this kind of serves two purposes. One, it lets the team know to expect that sort of communication from you. But then two, I think it can help alleviate some of the anxiety you may have reaching out, because I know for me, and I think others can be like this too, if I'm remote, I hesitate to just have a call with someone because I don't want to bother them. You know, they might be in the middle of something. I can't see what they're doing. And so if you just let the team know to expect additional calls or communication from you, then it can help relieve some of that pressure or anxiety from your shoulders.
We do have one other question from Tiana here. Anything that you learned or observed while working remotely that you'd like to continue doing as a team once we're back in our offices? I like that.
I need to think on that one.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. So one of the things that for me, I noticed when everyone transitioned to being remote versus me being remote and the team being at the office was how different it is when everyone's on their own cameras versus being in a room that has one camera or one speaker phone. So that made a big difference for me. So if there's a way to do that more when we get back into the office, that would be awesome.
I would agree with that too. I feel like our meetings are more productive now than a meeting where half the team was remote and half the team was in one conference room. I think there might be like a critical point that if a certain number of folks are remote, it might be more productive of a meeting if everyone just sits at their desk and calls in individually.
We posted this link, Jackie. You talked about it, 30 office party games for remote work, which has been a great blog. So you can head over there and check that out at any time. If there are no more questions, did we have any more advice before we start to wrap things up here?
I was just going to throw in that I finished. This is a bit of a plug for Remote by 37 Signals, which is a book about moving your organization to remote work, as well as how to yourself move to remote. And there's a lot of really nice 1 to 2 page nuggets in there. So it's a pretty quick read, which is perfect in this like rush to figure out how to work well remotely. So plug for that, 37 Signals Remote. And I actually think that they offered to reimburse anybody who bought it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
yeah, I believe so. They've been offering to reimburse, and I don't know if they're still doing free or I don't know what they're offering, but yeah, they did chime in and offer to reimburse, which is really fantastic. All right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Dave will buy you both a copy. That's how nice he is.
I'll buy everybody a copy.
Careful, you just said that, so now you can find them online.
Undo? Where's the undo button?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, Jackie, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on and sharing what you've learned so far. D, what you've been learning over the last couple months now. And I think as people are transitioning, hearing stories like this and tips certainly help. With that, I think as we start to wrap up, I probably have to add a couple. Thanks, Dave. Great tips. And great tips, D and Jackie. Thank you, Shannon. As we wrap up here, I should kind of mention we are continuing to kind of work through what our schedule is going to be from a live video standpoint. So the way we have it set up now, at least our thinking is on Friday, we'll have more of a short, fun, engaging live chat to wrap up the week. Think it would be fun, kind of bringing in more and more Detroit Labs team members on to maybe ask a couple serious questions and a couple silly questions, because I think it's still good to smile and laugh now as much as we can. At the same time, I think we'll have more remote spotlight live streams, and I'm really excited because next week at our normal time, I believe, right, Dave, at 3:00 on Thursday, our normal time, we will have Labs Live come back, which is fantastic because Chrissy and Erica have already prepared a great conversation about women in tech, and we had planned on having that essentially the day we started to go remote, and we wanted to make sure that we ironed out all of the kinks in this new live streaming remote setup. So excited that that's coming back. So make sure you follow us on all of our different social platforms. I think we'll be prompting some opportunities to ask some questions that we will make sure that we address on air. And again, if you have questions during any of these broadcasts, ask and let your friends know. And thank you for tuning in, and have a good rest of your Wednesday. So I'll see you all later. Goodbye.
Thank you, Dan.
Bye, everybody.
Great.